Hi, I'm Kelly Teague, and I appreciate you inviting me to be here today. I am the Western Regional Director of Community Support for Community Impact North Carolina. I would like to introduce Doug Green. Doug, I can't see everyone. So Doug is our Eastern Regional Director of Community Support, and he works with the 50 Eastern counties. I work with the Western counties, and he's on here. So he's a wealth of information and should be able to help you out if you need any information from him. Also, if you want to look us up, you may look us up at impactcarolina.org. We assist any county in North Carolina, and we are interested in prevention of substance misuse. And we believe that preventing the harm of drugs and alcohol in North Carolina, and also that North Carolina free from alcohol and other drug harms will be a North Carolina that's safer for us all. And that's sort of our mission and vision. So with substance misuse prevention, I'm going to talk about prevention just a minute. So we're going to take a step back. We've looked at recovery. We've delved a little bit in the networking into harm reduction, and all of it ties together. I think that we all are very dependent on one another, but I'm going to step away and just sort of share what we specialize in and just delve into it a little bit deeper. It's important to learn about how communities can prevent substance use disorders, and we all want to keep our children and communities safe. And in primary prevention, one of the main objectives is to prevent first use. Now, I know that a lot of people think prevention thinks that we're 100% abstinence, no one will ever use, and that's not necessarily the case. What we're trying to do is just prevent that first onset of use. And so the reason that we do that is we should look at the adolescent brain as compared to the adult brain to understand why we hope to delay the first use. The earlier someone starts using substances, the greatly their likelihood of developing substance use disorders. So according to Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, or CADCA, and Addiction Foreign Policy, their research has shown that 90% of adults diagnosed with substance use disorders started using substances before the age of 18. So let me clarify that just a little bit. That statistic you may say, oh, 90% of people under 18 that use are going to develop a SUD. That's not what I was saying. What I was saying is that when they researched people with substance use disorder, they found that 90% of those had started using before the age of 18. So that showed a correlation in that there's a very high likelihood that substance use disorder is tied to early misuse. So the adolescent brain is learning, developing, and changing all of the time, and it has the ability to learn a language or musical instruments much more quickly. And as an older person, I can say it's, as you can see, my IT challenges, it's very difficult for me to learn new tricks, but the brain can do amazing things at a young age. But unfortunately, that means that it can be harmed more easily, and the environment or the experiences that a person plays in adolescence has a big part on how their brain develops. So the part of the brain that makes decisions and impulse control, unfortunately, are the last to be developed. So that's why we attempt to push the onset on or the first use on as far as we can. So the adolescent's more likely to make risky decisions. And I think many of us can, if you deal with teenagers, or maybe when you were a teenager, you can realize this is the case. They're often impulsive, or they're more likely to experiment with substances or just engage in the risky behavior. And that's just because their brain is wired that way. And once I realized that with my children, I was able to live much more comfortably. Their brain is geared that way, but unfortunately that has some issues because substance can disrupt the adolescent brain development. And early use suggests that there'll be an increased risk of later substance use disorders. So besides first use, whenever we're talking about prevention, the things we would like to contribute to substance use disorder development is caregiver substance use or misuse, trauma, lack of social attachments, and these are all called individual factors. And as prevention specialists, we looked at individual factors. We also look at genetics, because genetics play a role in a person's likelihood of developing a substance use disorder, and we can't change our genetics, but knowledge is power. So it's important that you have that you recognize familial genetic traits, and that could indicate that a possible genetic disposition to substance use disorder. One way that we do this is we can do a genogram exercise, and it just helps people look at their genetics and sort of helps them get some knowledge. And like I said, knowledge is power. Areas key to primary prevention are environmental factors, and they include high drug availability. Now, the environmental is as a coalition, and with our support, we'll really focus on this aspect. And so areas key to primary prevention are these environmental factors, and they include high drug availability, lack of laws or enforcement, and just social norms supporting use. But for every risk factor, there is a protective factor to counterbalance it. Prevention focuses on strengthening the protective factors. We can control, these factors are factors that we can control to decrease the likelihood that a person or a community may struggle with substance use disorder. A big way of doing that is with coalitions or collaboratives. One of the evidence-based practices used to improve communities has been, if you're looking to improve the health and decrease substance misuse, is support of your coalitions. These coalitions protect from early substance misuse. Key sectors work together to obtain common goals, but they maintain their own identity. And also they develop comprehensive strategies after doing an assessment to reduce risk factors in a given community. And every community is very different. So their strategies and action plans and what they do is going to be very different. This is actually where coalitions can assist with opioid settlement funding. If you're looking at the MOU that was mentioned in the plenary this morning, you may see there's a need for communication in that MOU in an annual meeting with a report out. And if your community already has a drug-free community coalition, they're positioned to really assist you with this. And also with those funds, you may make that coalition more sustainable. At the onset, they probably would not need the funds, but whenever their DFC funding expires, you may be able to work with them to continue their coordination of your annual meetings that you're going to need in your report outs from your MOUs. This will assist in your sustainability of your prevention coalition with actually a very small amount of funds later on, while positioning you to easily provide through the coalition support, which is already there and already set up exactly how you would need it, your deliverables that you're going to need for opioid settlement funds. And a next thing you can think about with your funding in the prevention world is you may want to set your coalition up to provide capacity to apply for the drug-free community grant. This grant provides federal funding of up to $125,000 a year for up to 10 years to address substance misuse in your given community. So that all that money comes from an outside source into your community. And this funding has been proven. It's evidence-based. It does improve communities. Finally, if you're not interested in the DFC grant and you could still support your coalition coordinator with settlement funds, very small amounts. It would sustain their prevention efforts and also support sustainability in your community. They should already have a good network that would allow them to assist you with your deliverables. So those are just a few things that you can think of as you're starting to pull together how this funding is going to be spent. Coalitions work to counterbalance risk factors like social norms, poverty, drug availability, injustice, and trauma. We use in our coalition, we build capacity to have protective factors around parental involvement, community social engagement. And Doug and I would be happy to speak with you about your community and how you may better use these and other funds to support substance use disorder prevention in your communities. SYNC offers our prevention services at no charge. So this is not an advertisement for us. We do whatever we can for your coalitions and collaboratives in your community free of charge. So you feel free to reach out to either of us for more information about what would best fit your community. Like I said, all communities are very different. So why support prevention in your communities? Actually, prevention saves billions of dollars, and more importantly, it saves lives. And like I said earlier, we're not trying to prevent youth are going to experiment and they are going to try things. What we do try to do is put barriers in place so that usage is a little bit later, so their brain has more time to develop. So that is what we do in primary prevention. As we're talking about early interventions, and in just a minute, we're going to step on into a true early intervention. In primary prevention, some of the efforts that we include are before you actually need to step into more immediate individual assistance, and you're going to learn a lot about that. And then I'm looking forward to that in the next hour. But some of the prevention coalition efforts can include awareness campaigns like Lock Your Meds campaigns. With opioids, you may have seen Lock Your Med campaigns going around for several years, and they have been effective and continue to be effective. Also, you could, like I said, you could apply for the Drug-Free Communities Grant. You could use community and school policy. Just look at those and see how they affect substance misuse. Some communities have used Dover to Dover, Mendez Too Good programs, Handle with Care. The countyhealthrankings.org shows several different strategies and how they rank and what you can use in your community. Catch My Breath, community resiliency model works. Communities, and I am a teacher of that. And if your coalition is interested, you would have access to me at no charge to assist with teaching your teachers about the community resiliency model, which educates people on the biological aspect of the brain and its end result from trauma on the brain. And that just sets up for a stronger person and hopefully cuts back on substance misuse. If your coalition's not interested, you can reach out as well for that. I'm going to put some additional strategies and their evidence rankings in the chat box that you can click on and look at. There are what you want to provide for your communities and early interventions and even strategies are evidence-based practices. And you can go to these different links that I'll be putting in the chat and take a look at some of the rankings. Are they scientifically proven? Are they best practices? Are they promising practices? And then whenever you start your assessments and determining your strategies and what you're going to be doing in your community, you can look at these and see what might best fit with what you're doing. So I will put those in, and I'm going to stop sharing. And if we are at 11:21, so we're busting the moment. I want Mary to have plenty of time, but I will be staying on. If anybody needs more information, they can reach out to me at Kelly at Impact. I see Doug put that in. And also, like I said, I am sharing with everyone some of the promising practices and some links to that in the chat box. So Mary, I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So I'll turn it back over to Marilyn and let her do your introductions. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And the information that you share is so important for all the counties. And I'd be curious later to know if any of the counties that are on have been utilizing some of your programming. But with that, Mary Ferrari, you're here, right? All right.
Yes, I am.
All right. Take it away, Mary.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you all today. I'm going to just kind of do an overview of Emerald and Recovery High Schools, share a little bit about our past year, and then kind of, I think, dive into why I think it's important that we are having Recovery High Schools as part of our discussions when it comes to settlement funding and how that can support kind of the prevention, recovery, and in some ways, the treatment aspect. So Emerald opened its doors September 3rd of 2019 with 2 students and 2 staff members. And we based our model and our foundation off of a Recovery High School in Houston, Texas. Former public school teacher, had never heard of Recovery High Schools, but once discovered it, worked kind of off of building the foundation of learning from our Mecklenburg County drug-free coalitions and seeing and networking in our community the needs. And it always screamed back to young people, early intervention. And when I learned of Recovery High Schools, thought that is unbelievable concept. I love that it's happening around the country, but gosh, do we need more of it? And there weren't any in the Carolinas at all. I don't believe there ever were until Emerald opened in 2019. And so from opening the doors, we've grown from 2 students and 2 staff members, and we've just walked into finished our first quarter of year 4 with now over 30 students, 9 full-time staff members, and anywhere from 5 to 6 contract part-time teachers and recovery staff. And so it's pretty powerful. I can't even put into words sometimes what we get to do here every day, and the people I continue to reach out to for guidance and support in the recovery and the Recovery High School national organization that supports just the growth and development, because they're unique recovery high schools all around the country. Some are private, some are charter, some are within the public school system. And so it's unique to this state, and it's kind of rules and regulations, but also just to meet the needs to get off the ground is essential. And so for us in North Carolina, it made the most sense to go private to kind of ensure that we had some freedom and flexibility with minimal red tape and or hoops to jump through to figure this thing out and learn and have opportunities for our teachers and our staff to be creative and innovative. And so we have a balance every day of recovery and academics. And when I say we meet students where they are, it's unbelievable to witness tremendous growth and not just sustained recovery from drugs and alcohol, but from behaviors that also lead towards mental health struggles, not just substance use, but how they go hand in hand. But watching students know that when they walk in our doors, they're first, their priority. And if that means that school or academics needs to go on pause that day, that morning, that block, that will be provided. But while filtering through what's kind of nonsense as a teenager versus what's real. And so that's the balance and the practice we go through every day that you learn through experience in working with teenagers. But it's beautiful to watch them start to appreciate and show gratitude and walk in with more honesty and vulnerability, which then ultimately helps them tremendously in their recovery. When they're safe and they feel heard, yet they're also held accountable and boundaries are put in place to really start to increase their standards and they start to feel that accomplishment. It's the greatest thing to ever get to witness. It's an honor and a privilege to get to be in a space like this, to watch young people grow and transition. So I feel like we're just kind of, the staff is just in a beautiful spot to get to watch this and create an environment, but the students and their peer support, we start and end the day with recovery. And that's huge because there's such minimal pressure to just walk in the door. Sometimes showing up is a win for the day. So students walking in know they're greeted with music, with coffee, with an environment that's actually going to ask how they are. What was their weekend like? Congratulations on that job. Congratulations on a milestone in your journey of recovery or mental health journey. And so that knowing that everyone's so invested and involved has created a family environment. And it's important that it is small and intimate. Our class sizes remain under 10 students, and we make sure we have enough recovery support staff where there's always one person available, but our staff is meeting with students often, at least once every 2 weeks, if not more frequently as needed. But we really, I'd say, pride ourselves on the fact that we get to meet the students where they are. And again, if it's academics that need to go on pause, or they're doing really, really well in their journey, so you kind of have to filter through their nonsense and push them. So to get to be kind of their coaches and be coaching alongside them, while also seeing when they fall that we're here, but we're also going to lean into the outside support. So recovery high schools work so well in conjunction with outside supports. We don't claim or want to be treatment per se. We do help support programs, but we're helping to really support recovery. So students thrive in our setting that have outside supports, that when they enroll with us, they sign releases so that we can communicate and have this whole team that's on the same page for each individual student. Everything's customized, individual. It's why it's really, really hard work, long hours and days, but incredibly rewarding to kind of see someone and know someone so well that when things start changing for good or for not so great, we can kind of get a whole team on board and aware to support that one student. So again, then we get to push them, or we get to kind of pause the academics. And to have that flexibility is I think a big key to our success. Over the past 3.5 years, we are year round on purpose, so that we can provide ongoing support in the summers. Any breaks of time, even if they're short, are still the hardest times that we face. It's necessary for our staff to have breaks. It's necessary for our families and students to have breaks, but the year-round model, I know, has helped to minimize some of the, I think, major crisis that could occur. So in the summers, we're 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off throughout, and there's touch points that our staff gets involved in when we're even off, to ensure that there's just accountability and a familiar face that cares about them on the off weeks. Really, really important. And our staff, it's really cool how we've started and transitioned into year 4, where we were a very blended, primarily online when we started, component, where I was the main academic facilitator through the online portals, holding them accountable, printing tests, the whole thing, to now having all in-person classes. And the only time we utilize online is if a student comes to us with a really choppy transcript, and we want to make sure that we understand recovery happens at any given day, 365. So we're open to enroll students any day, any time of the year. So with that comes challenges with transcripts and helping them pick up right where they left off, post-treatment, homebound services, whatever the case may be. And so it's really important for us that we can be flexible and have an online component for some partial credits that can get completed a little bit at a faster pace than just jumping into all in-person learning. And it's been really cool to watch over the past year and a half by you all kind of in Raleigh. Wake Monarch Academy has opened its doors last fall, and they are in their 2nd year. So it's pretty great to see that North Carolina has 2 recovery high schools in our state, and hope that South Carolina can also start to get some coalitions and committees going to open their doors. But that's a little bit of a general gist of our day. I can say a couple other things, like we have an 8 o'clock start, 2:15 we end. And share from kind of our annual report from last year of the 2021-2022 school year, that we supported 37 students over that course of time. We have helped over 48, now probably pushing over 50 families since we opened. And from last year, I'll get some of those questions in a second. Last year, we had a 90% student retention rate. So when I first opened Emerald, we kind of were hearing being asked a lot, are you just a stepping stone? Do students come to your school and then go back to traditional high school or whatever? And really our culture is for Emerald to become your high school and not a stepping stone. We've seen incredible success with that. And it also allows for students to truly buy into everything we do here. If it is just a temporary solution, that's where it can be really hard to invest fully in our expectations here and in their journey of recovery if there's a different future end goal or placement. So 90% of our students retained last year. Our average GPA was 3.28 last year. We graduated 9 students in June and 2 students the year prior. And so 11 graduates, and they have had success in many different ways. I'm the first to tell you that post high school, I did not go to college. I took a year off. I was very adamant that I was not going to college. So I let the students know that sometimes the most stubborn of us need to figure some things out on our own, but support a plan and a future, whether it's jumping into the workforce, whether it's CPCC, local community colleges, four-year colleges, the trades. It's really important to kind of get a kind of a reset of what success looks like for each student. Because I know us as parents, we can get a little stuck in what we want for our child instead of necessarily what is necessarily best. Some of my other favorite things to highlight about what we get to do at Emerald is redefine the relationship that schools have with the families. As you can only imagine, our students are coming to us from a lot of different pasts and the past experiences with school. School has traditionally been one of the hardest places to be for our students. So to help not just make it less of a drag, but make it an awesome experience for them is to help rebuild their family systems and their relationships. So our staff is required to make 2 positive phone calls every single week, and we try to switch it up. I am definitely one that's not hand out participation trophies. So we don't just make phone calls for fun or to pretend things are great when they're not, but when they are deserved and earned, it is very important that we emphasize to our staff to make that call and highlight the heck out of that child for something really great that they've done. Historically, getting phone calls from schools has terrified our families. So we want to redefine what that looks like. That helps that relationship at home for sure. But in our mind of celebrating, we have peer days once a week where we really focus on culture of our school. And because students can come in and enroll any time of the year, it's so important that they feel loved and accepted and welcomed into our community. So we do peer days once a month, and culture focus and major celebrations based on their milestones in their recovery journey, whether it be substance use related or mental health. And so last year, we had over 10 students hit a year of recovery time. We had 4 students hit 2+ years of recovery or sobriety time. The most powerful testimonies are coming now from our students having 3.5 years of operation. Our students and families have been pretty unbelievable at starting to spread the word of their success in their healing process. And that's been kind of the most outreach we've done in 3 years. I'm finally out of the classroom so I can go back and network, but it is definitely a grind for the first couple of years to ensure that the foundation and the way things are happening in the day-to-day are going well. We have every year, at least 25 to 30% of our students are on some form of financial assistance, whether that is partial or full scholarships. We work really hard to build a scholarship fund so that we can support students and not have to turn families away. So we are tuition based, we are private, but we make it an emphasis to say we haven't had to turn a family away due to financial need. So if there's a family that shows up and we have to put them on a waiting list, it is our main mission to then go find funding in order to provide support and an equal opportunity for anyone and everyone to enter our school and get the support that they need from a recovery high school. Our board of directors are incredible. We have annual fundraising and giving, but as you can only imagine why it's so important for, I think, the communities in North Carolina, the counties, to know not just about recovery high schools, but that they're an incredible asset to early intervention that we need to be not just popping up more and more in our state, but we need to then be poured into and help to sustain and continue to grow. For us, we want to work towards being at 80 to 100 students and then max there and never exceed that, so that we remain having the intimate feel here and that students can be poured into just as if I had only 2 students. I want all of them to feel that high level of excellence and support and care. In order to do that, we need our communities to be invested in not just our young people when it comes to education and prevention, from kind of the early stages of maybe not even having a occurrence or misuse in any type of capacity. But when students are coming to us, they're 30 days or more sober, to be provided with an alternative as opposed to going right back to their traditional setting where people, places, things are the same. It's so critical that they're developing healthy relationships. They're looking outside of themselves. And there's components that are really important to their journey of recovery, because it's kind of like they've grown up on fast forward, yet they're still in many ways like middle schoolers. So there's so much to pour into our students while also getting to witness incredible growth and hope when they are continuously working on themselves. So again, we're 2 in the state of North Carolina. Emerald is 1 in Charlotte, and Wake is in Raleigh. If you're not involved in the communities that are working with these schools, I encourage you all to do so. And I am going to pull up, I think, unless Marilyn, if it's helpful, I saw a question in the chat box for me. Let's see. Can you share how counties can incorporate parts of Emerald model into existing schools? Good question. So I'll just quickly address that question. It's very important to say that what I love for Emerald, and I'm sure Wake feels the same way, is to help have education at large just look at things differently, with access to anything and everything through Google, and it's at our fingertips. Learning just has to look different if we want to keep our students engaged and challenged. And so pouring into individuals their true soft skills, life skills, and doing things in a very creative, tangible, higher ordered thinking, it's just different than kind of sitting in rows of desks and being given or provided direct instruction like we've traditionally done. So my hope is that there's more kind of recovery opportunities or peer support built into their traditional schools, which, you know, there's always schools trying to reinvent their schedule every year. And I was definitely a part of this personally, can share there's been principals that try to include an enrichment block for 45 minutes, X amount of times a week, or there's club time. There's definitely opportunities with as much kind of, I think, excess of nonsense that we do in schools. If we actually prioritized and poured into peer support with and bringing outside people who have lived experience, that would be quality shares, and letting people know that, like, hey, me too, or I'm here to support you. More mentors and buddies that actually are people that people can be look up to and have go-tos in their corner other than guidance counselors, because we know that they're overworked and there's not enough of them for the needs in the school. That would be my first recommendation. Where can peer support groups be implemented on a regular basis to really kind of start the day? If it was to end the day or a midpoint, better to have that than nothing at all. But I think those are easy ways. We can't really rely on kind of handing someone a educational packet or for the health teacher to just figure it out and handle it. We cannot allow for a one-time assembly to just be the checkbox. These kids thrive on consistency, accountability, and being uncomfortable, even when they say those are probably the 3 things they hate the most. It is actually the things that they need the most and show the most growth from. So those would be my suggestions. So Marilyn, I'm open if there's time or an opportunity where anyone would like to ask questions, or if there's more you'd like me to share about.
Yeah, I very interested to expand on what you just said on how a county can get started. Would they, if somebody wanted to create a satellite campus to what you're doing, how is that possible? And how much money does a county need to begin the initiative of having a recovery high school?
Those are great questions. So I'll kind of go backwards. So when you first start off, really what you need to consider are at least 2 staff members. You need someone who has experience in the academic world, and you need someone with experience in recovery. And that's a wonderful balance and place to start. And if those 2 people's or folks' salary can be covered, that's a place to start. When it comes to a budget, if you want to compare from day 1 to now, we had just enough to cover 2 salaries with a partnership. And now we're looking at going into year 4 with the staff I just mentioned, which is 9 full-time, 4 to 5 contract workers. And again, trying to be competitive because our work is hard here. We're going to be pushing close to $1 million annual budget. What I think is doable to get off the ground is probably somewhere around 100 to 120 to launch. But that would be also including the mindset that we have tons of fundraising to do, tons of grants to apply for. And we started as a nonprofit, building a community and coalition after hours as a straight volunteer, no dollars spent on me while I was still full-time teaching. Now that's not doable for everybody. But if there's a capacity to really network and pour 2 to 3 years into building a network and building a community around the need for Recovery High School, I feel very confident that from that starting point and about 120,000, it can get off the ground.
You know, we have to consider the fact that sometimes it's not so easy to get into working within a school system, right? To contact Department of Public Instruction. So there are opportunities that each of you can do within your county that you can start with without having to go that other route. And so when Mary started, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, how you started with like 2 students, 3 students?
2. Mm-hmm.
2. And I think Monarch did something similar. So you don't need, they don't need a tremendous space.
No.
Right? What do they need? A classroom, a floor in a building? What do you need to get to?
Ideally, you want to have the mindset for sure that it's, if possible, that it's more than just a room, but that is a great place to start. And how many Recovery High Schools started was out of a church basement, out of a 1 classroom and a recovery support space. That is a doable place to begin.
And Kelly, one for you, just similar to what Mary has been saying about how to get started. So if somebody wants to get started and wants to work with you, what would be the first step? What would be the first initiative that you would suggest they take on?
And you're muted.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. I have to hear that at least once during a meeting, or I'm not me. First of all, and most importantly, I would check with their community to see if they currently have a coalition or collaborative that is addressing some of the priorities. And if they want to reach out to either Doug or myself or look at our website, they can see if there are current coalition and efforts there. As far as choosing an initiative, typically there's a process for that, and especially in prevention, it takes a little bit of time. It's not like, oh, we'll just go buy this program and stick it in the schools and that will take care of that. It's a process of doing an assessment to determine what is the priority or the need in your community, and then you can choose your initiatives from that. For example, if it's tobacco and vaping, you may want to do Catch My Breath. It may be that you just need to develop a coalition or collaborative in your community to address substance misuse, especially if you're wanting to work on the prevention end of it, where you're looking at environmental strategies. Any group can look at their policies around substance use. Are they doing things to put barriers in place for substance use among youth and possible misuse? So that's sort of a roundabout question or roundabout answer to your question, but does that address it, or do you have a more specific ask?
Counties, that are doing I'm sure list the counties that are doing a really great job with working with you, and what are they doing?
if you want to look in the chat, Doug has shared the current coalitions that we have in North Carolina. And currently we are working with, Doug, can you jump in here? How many communities are we currently working with?
It's roughly 60 to 70 coalitions. Now, granted, some of those counties, communities, like the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area, Wake County, they have multiple coalitions, community collaborations built into their kind of system. And it makes sense for areas that large. I mean, it would be impossible for somewhere like Charlotte to have just one coalition with all the people, the different aspects of those within the community as well. So yeah, it's about 60 to 70 and they're growing. A lot of these coalitions were actually developed from opioid task force, when the opioid epidemic began, for a lot of these communities 10 years, within the last 10 years, throughout their processes and community development, they've grown into coalitions, many moving away from focusing just on opioids to focusing on all substances, and as well as it relates to mental health within their communities. And, of course, that draws in a lot of partners for them from their own silos to work together as one.
And then I'm good. I might have missed this, Doug, but, or Kelly, how many make up a good coalition? Does it matter how many members or from where they are or what?
I've seen some very effective groups of 5 or 6 people who are just key leaders in their community coming together. But as you develop, you're going to want to incorporate 12 sectors, and those sectors can include law enforcement, school systems, your county officials, youth, parents. So these sectors, as you're filling these sectors, everyone retains their own identity, but you all have a common goal. Once you determine what that common goal is, for example, if it is underage drinking, if you're having, large deaths from underage drinking, the group comes together and they all say we need to address this. So it can be as small a group as 5 or 6 people, but I've seen coalitions where they have senators and representatives from the state legislature in their coalition meetings. So that's it really just takes a small group to start and think, hey, we want to address this problem. Let's take a look at it. And then they start looking at the resources, what they have. And when I talk about resources, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about groups of people who have the same goal.
All right, great answer. And I have one more question for Mary, because I know, Mary, you like to travel and talk. So if there are counties who are interested in being an adopter, creating a high school, I mean, is that something that you're, traveling about now or what?
I would love and welcome opportunities for communities, coalitions, teams of people who want to start a recovery high school, or even throw out another alternative to consider is alternative peer groups. It's a smaller idea or concept, more of an after school process or team or organization. So just something to think about. I'm happy to help anyone from the lessons I've learned and point you in directions of some pretty awesome mentors and resources that I've utilized over the past 6-7 years. I'd be happy to.
And just one thing, I know I said one question, but you just said something and I just have to ask. So those peer groups, is that high school or is that open up to middle school too?
So it's wonderful. Good question. I have not really seen it in middle schools. However, I have seen it for high schools and young adults. So college age, ranging from like the 13 to 18, and then another subgroup from 18, 19 to 25.